Hi everybody, welcome to another scouting video. Still in British Columbia, there's Jerome Lesemann and Gary Paull. Today we are at the south tip of Hornby Island looking at Nanaimo. There's lots of clues here. Will this be a new Nick on the Rocks episode? We turn it over to Brady Lawrence after he sees this scouting video. Thanks everybody for joining us. Let's get started. Stunning.
Yeah, pretty spectacular in the sense that we're accessing parts of a submarine fan that are typically obviously underwater, but inaccessible just because of the depth, but also inaccessible because just like in a river, when you're moving gravel, this is a high energy environment. If you were in a submarine fan during an event that moves this gravel, you know, in a submersible, you're in real trouble. It would be just like you being in a river moving big cobbles and boulders. You don't want to be there when that's happening. So the same idea of high energy. The process of transport and a bit of deposition is a little different, but those same principles apply.
So without you being here, I would think, okay, conglomerate that's like maybe almost like a meta-conglomerate, like it's really solidly welded together. And I would just think river. Freshwater river.
Yeah.
What here tells us that it can't just simply be a freshwater river.
Right.
And are these river cobbles that just got flushed deeper into the ocean?
That's it. So if you look at the cobbles, they're quite rounded.
Yes.
Most of these are rounded.
Right.
And they look like river cobbles because they were probably river cobbles. They just happen to be river cobbles that have continued past where we might often think the river ends, which is at, you know, the shoreline of the ocean or a lake.
The sea. The river goes to the sea, and that's the end of the story.
But the fluvial system stops, but the sediment transport doesn't stop. It can continue. It is just going to transition, and in terms of how we transport, and we're going to now have to deal with things like turbidity currents that create turbidites. We're going to have to deal with underwater sort of debris flow type of features and a whole range of different processes like that. But much of the characteristics of the cobbles are acquired while they're in transport in a terrestrial system like a river.
Right.
Right. And then they continue their journey into the basin by funneling through channels that extend across, say, the continental shelf or across the edge of a basin and to the deeper parts. So if we look at some of these carefully, the sorting is better, the clasts are in contact. Sometimes they're completely supported by the sand matrix. So that's a slightly different way of transporting sediment underwater.
Sure.
You see imbrication in some of these really well. There was some around there. You can see that the clasts are imbricate, just like you have in a river.
There's not fossils that we can find in this here. They've been
not here. There's some on this island in the finer units. But again, this is not a very good substrate for preserving fossils.
Yeah.
Nor is it a good substrate to colonize because it's pretty high energy, and who lives in gravel, right? Who's going to settle in the gravel? They're going to prefer the quieter areas.
And the green rocks in here are presumably those are Carmoutzen.
They could be, but I don't know if they are. In fact, I don't think they would be because
we're coming from the other way now.
Correct. We're coming from
over there.
Coming from the east, delivering westward into the basin. So back to your question, how do you tell the difference? Some cases difficult, and it's the overall context of the deposit and the architecture that says, okay.
So just right here we might not be able to tell, but we know by looking around the corner and
that's right.
over there that
we might not see exactly the same depositional structures of like bars and features like that we might have in a river. So there can be some overlap in places. So it can be quite tricky, and it's the broader context that then sort of allows us to make that interpretation. So yeah, you're right. At this location, not necessarily obvious.
Basalt?
Basalts, ferric basalts, ferric andesites.
I'm looking for green schist.
You're looking for green schist, okay.
Yeah.
Gary?
You've got a source in mind, Gary?
Yeah. No, I don't.
No? Okay.
So this is rare. You can't just easily go to a submarine fan.
You cannot.
Especially with this much of a cross-section of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Difficult to access, dangerous to access. Even if you had equipment, it would be tricky to do.
Oh, and modern submarine fan, but even even old submarine fans that have been lifted out of the marine setting, that's pretty rare. Can you think of any other place like this?
Yeah, there's some in South America. There's a few good examples. There's some places. There's some, yeah. One of the challenges is that they're extremely large depositional systems too. So, you know, you could go out to an outcrop, but if you're thinking of a system that is depositing over hundreds of meters or kilometers, you know, your ability to capture the whole, or the relevant scale of what you can observe can be challenging. But you see here, from here, we can see that there's stratification in the gravel.
Right.
We see quite well. So there's, you know, coarser areas, finer areas. There's sandstone interbedded in there. So you just think of a bit like a river. There are parts of the river channel that are more coarse, some that are a bit finer. There's fluctuations in the energy.
It's going back and forth.
It might have a bit of it might move a bit, migrate a bit, but if it was migrating a lot, we might start to see stratification that speaks to that. You know, we could be seeing patterns.
My God.
So we're basically walking the axis of this conglomerate channel, and as we keep walking further, but very close to where we're standing. See, I'm standing and you're standing on sandstone.
Right.
And somewhere there's a transition. So there's a contact to the base of this conglomerate channel into this lighter colored sandstone. We'll see it a bit further, but it's somewhere at the base here in the driftwood. But the other fascinating thing that's here is that when this gravel was being emplaced, so when the channel was active, or near that time, there was erosion of a pre-existing substrate, right? This channel you excavated and eroded into, just like a river will erode its bed to a degree. And that destabilized that surface, and there's collapse. So there's like a bank collapse in here. And so when we walk this area, we'll start seeing areas where there's pretty thin beds, and there are blocks of very thin beds, and those are the pieces that tumbled into the channel as you eroded it. So as the failure of a bank into a flow of sand, if think of it that way, or a channel conveying lots of sand, eroded the channel, blocks collapsed, mixed in with the sand, and are now lithified and preserved. So we see a little bit of that here. I'll show you the small detailed portions of it. Oh. Like these little fragments, you see all these fragments?
Yeah.
Little pieces of sort of silty, more muddy. Here's another one. But we're going to see some that are, you know,
big one,
big as a
right
car.
Back here.
Yeah.
Where'd it go?
And this is happening prior to the conglomerate arriving, because the conglomerate is eroding into this sand.
Yeah, like.
So it's just, you can think of it as just as dynamic as a river can be, right? There are moments where the river is fairly quiet and is not substantially rearranging its bed and eroding, and then other times when it completely reshapes. It's during a flood, for example. So here's an example here of some of these blocks. Here's more examples of that, but this is a good one. And once you start looking at them, you start seeing them everywhere. Looking for them, you know what to look for.
Enclaves?
So here's bedded material, and you can look at the orientation, but you see the block shape, right? It's kind of rectangular here.
Right.
Here's another piece over here, tilted in the bedding is a completely different orientation. As you walk around, here's a couple other pieces. So we'll keep walking, but a lot of these blocks that are bedded are the pieces of the bank that collapsed.
I see. This is your interpretation after
Not mine,
teaching out here?
It's been interpreted by others.
Okay.
And it's just a really great example of that kind of... The way I like to think of it is that we're freezing in time something very short-lived in terms of an event that erodes, induces a collapse. But think about like a bank of a river collapsing into the channel.
Right.
How much of that do we preserve? You know, it kind of breaks up and so. But here we're preserving it because we rapidly encase it in sand that's doing both the work of eroding. The sand is eroding the channel and scouring, destabilizing the bank, but also kind of just incorporating.
There's
some good examples there.
Okay, I mean, I think Brady is going to be excited by all these different visual elements, all these shapes and the Swiss cheese and the giant pebbly bowling balls and
We'll keep walking, and then when we leave, we'll look at it from above, because then you'll be able to see those blocks from above.
Okay.
Even better. Here's a good example of a fairly large one.
Coherent block.
Yeah, exactly. And small ones at your feet there, for example, right? Small fragments. So all sizes, just something that falls in and breaks up.
That's a nice one. Right here.
That big round one? So that's
that just dropped off, I think.
No, this is a cemented sandstone.
Oh,
it's a separate, yeah, it's a concretion, exactly.
Oh, there's one right here. Here's
Wow.
Here's some good examples of those blocks. So those 3, 4, 5 ridges, those upstanding tilted,
yeah,
that's what's been also interpreted as the edge of this channel that's collapsing in, that falls in. So we'll go and look at it, but you'll see that the bedding is basically almost vertical. So it used to be nearly horizontal. You undercut it, things collapse into the channel. And so they're preserved here, but then the fragments of that collapsed and fell into the channel are all over, we're walking all over it. Huh. It's all in here. And so we were looking for the base of our conglomerate channel. We see it there, right? Right at the bottom. We have sandstone, and then suddenly it transitions very rapidly into the conglomerate.
I'm still trying to visualize what I would think if I was here by myself without you. Like, I would be like, I don't know, diamictite or something.
Right.
Or some glacial thing. I'm in British Columbia, for crying out loud. And, and I would never have come up with this story. No.
that
I don't think it's not an easy story to come up with. And I think those that did, I think that's quite an interesting, clever set of interpretations.
Well, I'm struggling with the visuals, I think, for the point of the episode, and I'm starting to think it's not that important to have the three-dimensional channel in mind. It's not that important to have an animation of all this. Like, I think it's just we're trying to get across a couple of basic messages, which is cool spot, crazy shapes. It's not just sandstone.
No.
There's a conglomerate and a sandstone that are similar in age. They're all depositing under sea level in a basin.
Oysters.
And maybe that's part of the hook. What do you imagine is happening under sea level? Is it super quiet, like some sort of aquarium? And in this case, the answer is no. I mean, look at this.
There's a good example in manageable size, right? But here's the examples of the fragments we're talking about. So these existed prior to this deposit, and a channel eroded into them, destabilized that material. It was bedded. You can see the bedding, but that was, more or less horizontal to start with. And these were they weren't rocks yet. They were just consolidated a bit. And they were able to sort of fragment into these sort of blocks, but they quickly got incorporated into a sand, think of it as a sand flow in the submarine fan. So the sand flow does the job of eroding a bank or a channel that destabilizes the material. The material fails, and as it fails, it falls into a sand flow that then incorporates these, and then kind of freezes everything together into what we see there. So we end up with the sand. This is the sand that did the work of eroding and destabilizing. These are the fragments of the destabilized material that fell into it.
Are you saying the same scenario happens later with coarser stuff?
We don't see that evidence as much in terms of the collapse. It could happen.
Oh.
But
the collapse stuff is done by the time you bring in the gravel.
Conglomerate, because it's overlying it. The gravel's over it, yeah.
Okay.
Or attached to it, right?
Or I think it's part of the sand bed that's at the base of the conglomerate, right, where we're looking at.
So this is all the Nanaimo group.
Yeah. This is all Upper Nanaimo group.
This shows the variation.
Yeah, this is
it's not just a sandbox.
No. No, and we get that impression that, especially when you look at vertical logs of the stratigraphy of the Nanaimo group, you think, oh, it's a nice organized set of mudstones and then sandstones and conglomerates and mudstones, but it's not that. It's just naturally much more messy and dynamic, and yeah, so the sandbox has lots going on, and it's got channels going through it, it's got things collapsing, it's got variations in energy.
Well, that's maybe something to talk about, that if you just have a sedimentary basin, there's 10 storylines within one sedimentary basin. If you know how to read all these different patterns and shapes and grain sizes. And forget about the fact that there's different sources for almost every one of these river stones. They're coming from the interior. They're coming from the east.
They're coming from the east, right? And then it's a controversial topic to figure out exactly where those rivers are and how much they change over time in terms of sources. But I think everybody would agree they come from the east. It's just a matter of how far south that they start collecting. But by the time you're here, I think it's pretty closer to the source that's today.
So that's sea level behind you right now.
Today, yep.
It's salt water right over there.
Yep.
I think an obvious question, if we do this episode, is all this stuff used to be below sea level, and now it's been lifted out of the water. Why? And when?
Tectonically is probably the main driver.
You're a tectonic beast.
No, but it's
I've heard tectonic genius.
Is that what they were? That's what you got called?
Exactly, of course, yeah. Don't ask questions of just anybody. I got to ask a tectonic genius.
That's certainly not what I've been called a lot of things, but that's not the right one. No, I think it's largely due to tectonics in terms of compression and the subduction offshore that's been flexing the edge of this plate over time.
You don't think there's uplift post-Silesia accretion and there's some sort of, like Aaron has
there probably is.
temporary high down in Washington.
There's definitely compression during Silesia because we see folds, right? The Cowichan fold and thrust, there's thrusting and folding, but some of the uplift of this probably happened prior to Silesia, may have started even before.
What's our number here again? 70?
So let's go with 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's maybe up and out by 60.
I don't know exactly.
Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the rates and the drivers of uplift, but it was underwater and emerged out of the.
Are you a tafoni genius as well as a tectonic genius?
No, I see it everywhere, but that tafoni part is.
That was a thought I'm having, Nick. Is that if we're down here, people are going to see all that.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's this? I don't care about that conglomerate stuff, but that.
It's a weathered product, right? It's a weathering effect. It's not exclusive to, but it's most prevalent in sandstone. So it's related to the porosity of sandstone. It's related, I think, to the interaction with sea spray and the growth of salt crystals in some of the pore space of a sandstone, and somehow to the cementing of sandstones. But beyond that, I think there's different views on it, and I'm not sure if there's a clear. It's kind of like these are like the Mima mounds of the ocean, you know.
Well, I've never had a satisfying answer for anybody.
I haven't either.
In the SWAC by Rosalind and that
you have
sort of
some
thing.
in the SWAC too?
In non-marine sandstone.
So clearly not a marine.
And I mean, in the
only marine setting.
Well, what do you think, Gary?
Up there too.
What do you say if you have somebody asking? Like, well, this is.
I tell them to go ask a tectonic genius, or at least a geologist.
I mean, look at this. Is like this is classic. This is like honeycomb cereal. It's perfect. Viewers, does somebody have a comment that says exactly how tafoni, I think it's Tafoni.
Yeah. Honeycomb weathering, otherwise known as.
If it's one of those mysteries, great.
I think it kind of is.
I've heard something about dissolving calcium carbonate.
That it is? Okay.
But
I've heard different things. So here's a great example of the blocks we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right, see the bedded mudstone, siltstone block, but encased in sand. It's a large one here. Here's the edge of it, right? See that? And I can just like run my finger all the way along the edge of that block.
Okay, you didn't
Some of
lie.
these are pretty cool right here.
You
with
did
the-
not lie. Not like usual. This time you didn't lie.
This time I didn't.
I mean, let's not get carried away. This isn't being carried 3 kilometers.
This
is
fell
just-
off the cliff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a piece that fell off the cliff.
Wow. I think we have to do this. I'm still not sure we have the elegant hook and the elegant narrative, but we'll figure it out. You think sedimentary rocks are boring? Well, I mean,
No, they're awesome.
this doesn't seem like it's boring.
So great, like look at that, all fractured material that you're standing on there. All these little fragments of...
It's like a breccia in
Yeah,
places.
yeah, in a sense it is. In a sense it is.
Huh.
It's sort of, it's a process of fracturing and producing little fragments.
But soft sediment.
Soft sediment that's cohesive enough, like consolidated enough to be cohesive because it's quite fine grained, right? But obviously you can't transport it far or long because if you did, it would just get
Right.
pulverized.
Right.
So it falls into this sand and this sand sort of encases it, moves it along a bit, but it's not rolling it and tumbling it, right? So there's so much sand that it's not really turbulent. It's not just like a river deposit that way. This is one of the key differences in terms of transport in these submarine fan systems.
It kind of reminds me a bit, if I were, we have these little river channels in the summer,
Yeah,
sandy, coarse sand. You sit down in them,
yeah,
and the river comes and it like digs a hole under your
yeah,
butt,
yeah,
and you kind of sink into it, and then you stand up and it covers back up.
Yeah.
yeah.
Kind of like probably what's going on with
Yeah,
with these.
so there's,
Deep
the water
underwater.
around excavates around you, and then you've got here's some more great
Wow.
little fragments of it.
But we're stratigraphically way, way high above the Sicker that we were at this
Oh, yeah.
morning. So we're 2
Kilometers,
miles,
yeah, for sure.
kilometers,
Yeah.
4 kilometers.
4 or 5, yeah. So that, if you look at the bedding in the sandstone, that is probably closer to the original bedding in terms of orientation and lack of tilting. And that is very different from that bedding, which is almost vertical.
Yeah.
So this is the pre-existing failed material. That's how it's been interpreted. These are just basically sort of failed blocks, but you can just see the difference. They're basically orthogonal. This bedding we're standing on, you see it under our feet, right? You get these sheets of sand that are almost horizontal.
This is Sicker Point. Come on, man.
And this is almost vertical.
Yes.
And that's the source of the fragments. So when we can walk that and we'll find the same interbedded, kind of silty to mudstony little units. And here are the fragments of that stuff right here under our feet. Right there. See, there's basically a bed of fragments.
Yeah, it's like just disintegrated right
That's it.
there.
Yeah. And there's more fragments below us here.
Anybody like oysters?
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Slider shot.
Yeah, like check these out. You want cool patterns? Look at that. This is just falling in.
Too bad it's not marble.
Petrified sea lions.
Oh, other island. So I'm standing on original bedding right here.
I think you're standing on a bed of fragments. So you're standing kind of in that channel.
Let me stand over here more.
I'm also standing in it because the bedded material is obviously not deposited at this angle, right? It's near vertical
Yeah.
here. So it's been It's fallen in, it's collapsed.
That's cool.
In?
Can you stand there? That looks
Yeah,
really
sure.
cool. Have to
And
get
then, yeah.
Is this a morning or evening place, or does it matter?
I don't know.
I guess there's enough.
I don't think it's midday.
You don't think it's midday?
I think it'd be better in the morning or evening.
Do the ferries work with that? Can we get over here early or late?
Yeah, we can look at the schedule. I think they run until 7 or 8, I think, p.m. Maybe even later. And then morning, early morning, you can come out. Yeah.
Okay, Brady, what do you think? Hornby Island,
Yeah.
submarine channel, I guess.
Yeah, submarine fan deposits and a submarine channel. Yeah, conglomerate channel. I just like this scene. Conglomerates, tafoni, sandstone, it's just pretty.
Yes. No, I think maybe Brady's going to have to do some work on this, because they usually type up a bunch of stuff and then he just grabs what works for him. And if he sees this video, I think we'll just maybe play off of what he's excited about and just have enough background from you that we just kind of roll with it.
Yeah. But you got all these, they look like Easter eggs. They're so rounded and they're so, it's gravels.
So what are the, okay, to wrap up, what are the elements here? There's Easter egg conglomerate.
Yeah.
There's tafoni, which just is wild. There's
sandstone.
Steeply dipping sandstone, at least over there, not throughout this whole thing.
And the blocks that go with, right? That's the, to me, those things go together. The fragments that are now encased in the other sandstone.
The tilted stuff
The tilted,
goes with the little blocks.
That's right. The tilted stuff is the tilted one is the beds that haven't actually fully fallen and broken into the fragments that end up below.
I didn't have that till right now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So
Right?
those are like just some big chunks that fell.
That's it. Just sort of like toppled a bit and rotated into, but other pieces beforehand completely fragmented and got mixed in with the sand.
So did this channel we're looking at here come
Yeah.
out towards us
No,
much further?
we're basically more or less walking along the axis.
Okay.
You're right,
When we,
Gary.
when we go
And then-
around the bend,
Then we're gonna.
we're looking, you know,
Up it.
basically, that's right, orthogonal to the flow. But this is more or less probably close to parallel. We've walked this beach parallel to the axis of the channel.
Okay, before we turn things off, Gary, anything else from here? The three elements, the three visual elements, we build around all three. Tafoni, blocks,
Big blocks,
and
smaller blocks.
and the conglomerate itself.
Did you go around this point here? Because there's Arbutus at the top.
And-
It's
Yeah,
conglomerate
And
sandstones.
we're underwater here.
underwater,
Yeah. Lots of water.
It has to emphasize the marine thing, I think. Like
Yeah.
people are just visualizing a lake maybe or fresh water, but
No.
at least from central Washington, that's what we're, okay.
Yeah.
All of our sandstones are fresh.
Right, not this one.
All of our sandstones are fresh. Is that right? Is that
I'm thinking as soon as you said that.
maybe not?
I mean, they look like an Arcosic sandstone.
Yes. Well, we just earlier did another episode we've already filmed for this season. Freshwater Arcosic sandstone, Leavenworth, Chumstick
Wow.
Basin. This is almost identical looking Arcosic sandstone at first glance.
Yeah, there's more of these good fragments.
You love your blocks.
I
You
do.
love your blocks.
Well, that's how I know if I'm in the, you know, the older sandstone or the younger sandstone. The one that's got the blocks is younger.
Ah,
The one that provides the blocks is the older one.
okay. Okay, last thoughts. What can we say about 70 million years ago? We're pretty much here. Or we're on our way north.
Yeah, we're probably
Or-
getting close to the end of the journey north, I think. I'm not, good question. I'm not exactly sure paleogeographically how much we're still moving.
Silesia has not arrived.
No.
Yakutat has not swum north up the coast. But we're clearly after most of BC has been built.
Yeah. Yeah, there's already been, I mean, insular superterrane's been accreted.
Dinosaurs are about to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
We're close to the extinction event here.
Yeah.
No fossils in here.
Not in this area. Elsewhere on Hornby, lots of fossils. Those ammonites I showed you on campus,
Yeah.
many of those come from,
Okay.
or similar things here. There's little crab fossils, all kinds
Is there
of
any ash
oysters. Nope,
So no ash to date.
don't know of, no.
Look at this. I thought I hated tafoni. I think I still hate tafoni because I don't know what to say, but
But it's, yeah, it's pretty.
this could easily be a tafoni episode. I mean,
Yeah.
Gary was joking, but like
Well,
Gary does that
Yeah,
sometimes.
the Tafoni show.
yeah, see more
Let's
of
have
these,
some oysters.
these chunks, right?
Yeah.
So all this is coming this way. Right, it's all moving this way. And then the gravel comes in.
Okay, and then here's another, he's on another chunk here.
That's it. You can just tell, like anytime it's
Yeah.
really steeply
Yeah.
tilted, that's a chunk.
And it's nice how the barnacles nicely outline that
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow, we're still on. You want to have lunch here?
you bet.
Okay. Pick your tafoni spot.